hold my waist," the orc rider said. Adrian Vale stared at the broad green hand she had extended toward him, then at the black mare dancing beneath him. Rain silvered Veyra's braids and ran over the two small tusks rising from her lower lip. Behind them, somewhere beyond the trees, men were shouting and his frightened horse was crashing deeper into the royal forest, with a cut saddle strap hanging beneath its belly. "You are enjoying this," Adrian said. "A little." Another arrow struck the oak beside his head. Veyra's amber eyes narrowed. "You can protect your pride, human, or you can protect the rest of yourself. Choose quickly." Adrian caught her forearm. She pulled him from the mud with shocking ease, and he landed behind her on the mare's narrow racing saddle. There was no room between them. His chest met the warm leather across her back. His knees pressed along the outside of her powerful thighs. He kept both hands lifted awkwardly in the rain. Veyra looked back at him. "I said hold my waist. We are rivals. Then hold it competitively." The mare surged forward before Adrian could answer. He wrapped both arms around Veyra. For 3 years, Adrian had imagined defeating the undefeated orc champion before 40,000 spectators at the Royal Mile. He had imagined passing her at the final bend, hearing the crowd roar and watching the confidence finally leave those infuriating amber eyes. He had never imagined clinging to her through a thunderstorm while her wet braids struck his cheek and her body moved between his arms with every stride. The mare leapt a fallen tree. Adrian tightened his grip by instinct. His palms flattened against Veyra's stomach, and he felt her breath catch. "Too tight?" he asked near her ear. "I did not say that." Then she lowered herself over the mare's neck and carried them into the dark. 6 hours earlier, Adrian had believed the only danger awaiting him was losing a horse race. The final race of the Crown Circuit was held once every 7 years. Riders came from every province of the kingdom, but by the last week, only 2 remained close enough to win the silver crown. Adrian Vale, the human favorite from the Western Estates, had won 3 races. Veyra Ashbourne, the orc rider no noble stable had wanted to train, had won 3 as well. The 7th race would decide everything. Adrian had arrived at the royal grounds before dawn to find Veyra already exercising her mare on the empty track. She rode without a saddle, her dark red training coat tied around her waist, her sleeveless black shirt showing green shoulders marked by old white scars. The mare responded to shifts so small, Adrian could barely see them. He leaned against the rail and watched longer than he intended. Veyra completed one final circuit and stopped directly in front of him. "Studying me?" she asked, "looking for weaknesses?" "Find any. You turn your left shoulder before asking for speed." For the first time that morning, her smile disappeared. Adrian smiled. "There it is. And you press your tongue against your cheek when you are nervous." "I am never nervous." Her gaze dropped deliberately to his mouth. "You are doing it now." Adrian stopped. Veyra's smile returned, slow and satisfied. She slid from the mare and landed close enough for him to smell rain, horse, and the cedar oil woven through her braids. She was taller than he was by half an inch, a fact she used without mercy. Her eyes moved over his riding clothes, his polished boots, and the blue ribbon tied around his upper arm. "Your noble sponsors dress you beautifully," she said. "Jealous? Of the coat, perhaps?" She pinched the blue wool between 2 fingers, not of the man inside it. But she did not release the fabric immediately. Adrian looked down at her green fingers resting against his chest. Veyra noticed where he was looking, where he was. The teasing in her expression changed into something quieter. Then a stable hand called Adrian's name, and she stepped away. "Midnight course inspection," Veyra said, gathering her reins. "The forest section will be open after sunset. Try not to fall where I can see you." "Would it damage your opinion of me?" "You would need to know my opinion first." She led the mare toward the orc stables. If you enjoy original fantasy romances, support the channel and hear more stories at https://www.patreon.com/cw/talesfromorc. Now, back to Veyra and Adrian. By sunset, rain had covered the racing grounds. The officials considered closing the forest course, but the seventh race was famous for continuing in any weather. Riders who wanted to inspect the route could do so at their own risk. Adrian went alone. His gray stallion, Northwind, was calm when they entered the pines. He became restless near the abandoned stone bridge. Adrian slowed him, feeling an unfamiliar looseness beneath the saddle. The leather gave way before he could dismount. The saddle rolled. Adrian struck the ground hard enough to lose his breath. Northwind reared, terrified by the hanging strap, and fled between the trees. Adrian pushed himself to one knee. The strap had not torn. It had been sliced almost completely through and then covered with dark wax. Someone had wanted it to fail far from the stables. Hooves approached through the rain. Adrian reached for the small knife at his boot, expecting whoever had followed him. Instead, Veyra appeared between the pines on her black mare. She took in the cut strap, the empty track, and Adrian's bleeding temple in one glance. "Can you stand?" "I have had more graceful evenings." That was not my question. He stood. Pain cut through his left side, but nothing felt broken. Veyra dismounted and knelt beside the ruined saddle. Her expression hardened when she saw the wax. "This was done by someone who understands tack," she said, "or someone who paid a groom who does." Voices sounded behind them. Veyra extinguished her lantern at once. Through the trees, 3 covered lamps moved along the route from the direction of the royal stables. "Officials?" Adrian whispered. Officials announced themselves. An arrow answered him. That was how Adrian Vale, proud favorite of half the human court, ended up behind his greatest rival with his arms locked around her waist. Veyra guided the mare off the marked course and down a steep deer trail. Branches clawed at Adrian's coat. The riders behind them spread out, trying to force them toward the river. "They were expecting me to be alone," Adrian said. "They will be disappointed. You could leave me and win without proving I am faster than you." She glanced back, rain bright on her tusks. "I would never forgive you." The trail narrowed beside a ravine. Veyra slowed only enough to find the stone marker hidden beneath ivy, then turned the mare through what appeared to be a solid wall of thorn bushes. Beyond it stood an old toll house, with half a roof and an attached stable. She dismounted inside and pulled Adrian down after her. His injured side failed when his boots touched the ground. Veyra caught him around the ribs. For one suspended moment, his arms settled over her shoulders and her face was directly beneath his. "Still graceful?" she asked softly. "Exceptionally." Her gaze lingered on his mouth. Outside, the hidden riders passed without seeing the toll house. Veyra did not let him go until the hoofbeats vanished. The toll house stable was dry but small. One stone wall remained intact, and an old iron brazier stood beneath a cracked chimney. Veyra found split wood beneath a feed box and built a fire while Adrian removed his soaked coat. When he tried to lift his shirt, pain stopped him. Veyra looked over her shoulder. "Sit. I can manage. You are pressing your tongue against your cheek again." Adrian sat on an overturned bucket. She came between his knees and reached for the hem of his shirt. Her hands paused before touching him. "May I?" The question surprised him more than the arrows had. "Yes." Veyra lifted the wet linen slowly. Adrian raised his arms while she drew it over his head. Her knuckles skimmed his stomach. The stable was cold, yet heat followed every place she touched. His ribs were already darkening beneath the skin. "No break," she said, after pressing carefully along his side. "But you will hate breathing tomorrow. I often find it unnecessary during a race. You joke when you are afraid. You insult people when you care about them." Her fingers stopped against his ribs. Adrian met her eyes. "Did I find another weakness?" "No." Her voice was lower now. "You found a dangerous assumption." Veyra tore a strip from the clean lining of her cloak and wrapped it around his body. To pass the cloth behind him, she had to lean close. Adrian could feel her breath against his throat and the light brush of one tusk near his collarbone. He placed a hand at her waist to steady her. Her body became perfectly still. "Too tight?" he murmured. Her amber eyes lifted to his. "I did not say that." Neither moved. The fire cracked behind her. Rain drummed on the remaining tiles. Adrian's hand rested against the curve of Veyra's waist, where wet leather gave way to the warm fabric of her shirt. He could feel the measured rise of her breath beneath his palm. "You should finish the bandage," he said. "You should stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "As though you have forgotten every clever thing you planned to say." "Perhaps I have." Veyra's lips parted. Then the mare stamped in the next stall, and the moment broke. She stepped back, pulled the bandage tight, and tied it with more force than necessary. Adrian hissed. "Consider that a lesson." "In what?" "Timing." Veyra removed her own rain-heavy coat and hung it near the fire. Beneath it, her black riding shirt clung to her shoulders and waist. A dark stain spread along her right sleeve. Adrian stood. "You are bleeding." "A branch." "Sit." She raised an eyebrow. "I learned it from a very commanding woman." "You learned slowly, but thoroughly." Veyra sat on the same bucket. Adrian knelt in front of her and rolled up her sleeve. The cut across her upper arm was shallow, but grit had entered it. He poured clean water from her flask over the wound. She did not flinch. "You can admit it hurts," he said. "Would that please you?" "It would reassure me that you are made of flesh." Her gaze moved over his bare chest. "You required reassurance?" Adrian nearly dropped the flask. Veyra smiled with one corner of her mouth. He cleaned the cut and wrapped it with another strip from her cloak. His fingers looked pale against her olive-green skin. There were other scars along her arm. A bite near the elbow, a white line at the shoulder, and a small round mark that looked like an old burn. "How many times have you fallen?" he asked. "From a horse?" "4. Only 4. I did not say how many horses fell on me." Adrian looked up sharply. She laughed then, a deep, warm sound he had never heard from across a racetrack. It changed her entire face. The severe champion disappeared, leaving a woman with rain-bright eyes and a smile that made the cramped stable feel suddenly smaller. "That was cruel," he said. "Your expression was worth it. I thought you were injured." "Would that trouble you?" He tied the bandage and left his hands resting around her arm. More than it should. The laughter faded from her face. Veyra reached out and brushed damp hair away from the cut at his temple. Her thumb followed the line of his cheek, slow enough that there could be no mistaking it for medical concern. Adrian leaned into her touch before pride could stop him. The space between them closed by an inch. Then Veyra withdrew her hand. "We need to decide what happens at dawn," she said. Adrian remained kneeling. "That is an impressive retreat." I do not retreat. What would you call it? Choosing better ground. He smiled reluctantly and rose. They examined the contents of his fallen saddlebag, which Veyra had caught before pulling him onto her mare. The cut girth strap was there, along with the black wax used to conceal the blade mark. Veyra held it near the fire. Stable seal wax, she said, used to waterproof tack before a long course. Every royal groom has access to it. And every sponsored rider. Adrian looked at the blue ribbon still tied around his arm. His principal sponsor owned 6 breeding estates and had wagered a fortune on Adrian winning the circuit. If Veyra withdrew, the outcome would be nearly certain. But the attack had been aimed at Adrian, not her. Someone does not merely want one of us to lose, he said. They want control over which of us reaches the race. Veyra studied him. How much do you owe your sponsors? Nothing. That answer came too quickly. Adrian stared into the brazier. They paid my father's debts after he died. They purchased North Wind. They paid every entrance fee for the last 4 years. And what do they receive if you win? Breeding rights, endorsements, access to the royal stables. What do you receive? The crown. Veyra's tusks showed when she frowned. A beautiful object that cannot feed a horse. It also comes with 12,000 sovereigns. How much belongs to you? Adrian did not answer. She understood anyway. Human nobles have found a very elegant way to own people without chains. And you ride only for freedom? Her gaze sharpened. Adrian regretted the question, but Veyra surprised him by answering. I ride for land, she said. There is an abandoned cavalry estate beyond the northern ridge. Good grass, deep wells, 2 barns. The owner will sell only for the entire prize. You want a breeding estate? A school? Adrian waited. Veyra rubbed her thumb along the edge of her bandage. Orc children from the border towns are permitted to clean stalls, carry feed, and polish noble saddles. They are rarely taught to ride. Human children without family names are treated little better. I want a place where no one asks what blood they have before putting reins in their hands. Adrian imagined her standing at the rail in morning light, not alone, but surrounded by children on patient horses. He could see it so clearly that it hurt. You never told the reporters. They prefer stories about the savage orc who terrifies civilized riders. You do terrify civilized riders. Only the slow ones. Adrian smiled, but something in his chest had shifted. For years he had wanted the silver crown because everyone around him insisted it would prove his worth. Veyra wanted it because she had already decided what her worth could create for others. If I lose, he said, I hope it is to you. Do not become gentle with me, Adrian. It was the first time she had used his name. He looked at her across the brazier. Why? Because I know how to defend myself against your arrogance. Her voice softened. I do not know what to do with your kindness. The rain continued past midnight. There was one dry horse blanket and a bed of old straw. Adrian offered her the blanket. Veyra refused. They argued until the mare turned her back on both of them in apparent disgust. Finally, Veyra spread the blanket across the straw. We share it, she said. If you mistake practicality for invitation, I will put you outside. With my injuries? The rain may improve your personality. They lay back to back at first. Adrian could feel the warmth of her through their shirts. Each time he adjusted his bruised ribs, she shifted to give him room, though there was none to spare. After a while, he heard her teeth touch in a small, involuntary shiver. You are cold, he said. I am an orc. Are orcs immune to weather? We are immune to admitting weather has defeated us. Adrian turned. Come here. Veyra looked at him over her shoulder. Practicality, he said. For several breaths, she did nothing. Then she rolled toward him. Adrian opened his arm. Veyra settled carefully against his uninjured side, one hand resting on his chest. Her head fit beneath his chin. His arm curved around her back, and his fingers found the narrow space between her braids. The closeness was no longer forced by a running horse. No arrows flew behind them. Either could move away. Neither did. Your heart is fast, she whispered. Bruised ribs. Liar. You insult people when you care about them. Go to sleep. Adrian smiled into her hair. Sometime before dawn, he woke to find Veyra's thigh across his and her palms spread over his heart. His own hand rested low at her waist beneath the edge of the blanket. The fire had almost died, but her body was warm against him. He should have moved his hand. Instead, his thumb traced one slow line over the fabric at her side. Veyra's eyes opened. For a long moment they watched each other in the blue light before sunrise. Practicality? She asked. Not entirely. She did not move away. Adrian touched the silver ring around the base of her left tusk with one careful fingertip. Does this mean something? It means I survived my first championship. May I? Her breathing changed. Then she nodded. He traced the ring, then the smooth edge of the small tusk. Veyra's eyes closed for an instant. When they opened again, all her practiced mockery was gone. She lifted her face toward his. A horse called outside. They froze. North Wind stood beyond the broken stable door, soaked and trembling, but alive. Veyra closed her eyes and lowered her forehead to Adrian's shoulder. Your horse has terrible timing, she said. I was about to say the same of your mare last night. Veyra rose, taking the blanket and all its warmth with her. Then perhaps the animals are protecting us from bad decisions. Adrian sat up carefully. Would it have been bad? Her back was toward him. She remained still long enough to answer without words. We return to the grounds, she said at last. We show the officials the strap, and until we know who attacked you, neither of us rides alone. That sounds almost like concern. Veyra looked back. It is selfishness. I still intend to defeat you, of course. But when she helped him stand, their hands remained joined longer than necessary. They reached the racing grounds shortly after sunrise. Veyra rode her mare, Ash, while Adrian walked Northwind beside her. The stallion's cut girth had left a shallow burn beneath his belly, but he was otherwise unharmed. The officials listened to their account in a locked tack room. The chief steward examined the strap, the wax, and the arrow Adrian had pulled from the oak. Then he placed everything inside a wooden evidence box. The forest attracts thieves, he said. Thieves who carry tournament arrows and know which saddle belongs to a finalist? Veyra asked. The steward's face tightened. We will investigate. When? After the final. Adrian laughed without humor. Convenient. The steward warned them not to spread rumors that might damage the prestige of the race. Veyra leaned over his desk until the man shrank into his chair. If another strap is cut, she said, your prestige will be the least damaged thing in this room. Adrian took her gently by the elbow before she could improve the threat. Outside, reporters and spectators already filled the central yard. Veyra pulled her hood up, but it was too late. Someone saw them emerge together. Questions flew at once. Why had they arrived from the forest at dawn? Why was Adrian walking his horse? Why was Veyra wearing a torn cloak? And why, one particularly observant reporter asked, was Adrian's blue coat buttoned over a bare chest? We inspected the course, Adrian said. Together? He looked at Veyra. She worries she cannot find her way without me. Veyra smiled pleasantly. He struck his head. The crowd laughed, and they escaped in opposite directions. Adrian's sponsor was waiting inside the human stable. The nobleman did not ask if Adrian was hurt. He asked whether the saddle failure would keep him from racing. No, Adrian said. Good. The betting houses moved against you this morning. We need a public practice run by noon. Northwind needs rest. Then use another horse. Adrian looked through the stall door at his trembling stallion. No. The sponsor lowered his voice. You have obligations. I remember every one of them. See that you do. The nobleman adjusted the blue ribbon on Adrian's arm. And keep away from the orc. The crowd enjoys rivalry. It does not enjoy confusion. Adrian removed the ribbon and handed it back. The crowd will survive. For the first time in 4 years, he walked away while his sponsor was still speaking. Veyra found him an hour later in Northwind's stall, rubbing calming oil into the horse's neck. Your wealthy owner looks displeased, she said. Sponsor. A prettier word for owner. Adrian gave her a tired look. Did you come only to be unbearable? No, I brought breakfast. She held up a cloth bundle containing black bread, hard cheese, and 2 apples. Adrian took the food, and they sat side by side on an overturned feed chest while Northwind ate 1 apple from Veyra's hand. Traitor, Adrian told him. Veyra stroked the stallion's nose. He recognizes quality. Adrian divided the bread. Their shoulders touched as they ate. The steward will do nothing, he said. I know. My sponsor knew the betting houses had moved against me before I told him about the saddle. Veyra turned toward him. Does that make him guilty? It makes him informed. And dangerous. Probably. She took the cheese from his hand and bit into it. Then we discover what he knows. We? You heard me. I thought we were rivals. We are. I want to defeat you, not bury you. Adrian reached for the cheese. She held it away. He leaned closer, trying to take it, and found himself almost nose to nose with her. Veyra's eyes dropped to his mouth. You could ask, she said. For the cheese? If that is what you want. Adrian forgot about breakfast. Northwind pushed his large head between them and stole the rest of the cheese. Veyra stared at the horse. He truly does hate you. Adrian began to laugh. Veyra tried not to, but lost the struggle. They sat together in the straw, laughing like old friends, instead of 2 people who had spent 3 years pretending they felt nothing beyond competition. Later that morning, Veyra brought Ash into the private exercise ring. Your ribs will not allow a full training run, she said. But if someone attacks during the race, we may need to ride together again. You invented a practical reason to put me behind you. Are you afraid? Of you? Constantly. She mounted, then offered her hand. This time Adrian did not hesitate. He settled behind her. Ash was a compact desert mare bred for endurance rather than size, so his legs rested close along Veyra's. He placed his hands lightly at her waist. That is not how you held me last night, she said. There were arrows. Imagine arrows. I am trying to behave honorably. Veyra turned her head just enough for him to see the gleam in her eye. Why begin now? Adrian tightened his arms. Ash started forward at a walk. Veyra taught him how to move with her instead of against her, how to place his weight during a turn, and how to lean without pulling her from the saddle. Closer, she instructed. His chest met her back. Your left hand is too high." He lowered it an inch. "Not there. You may need to demonstrate." Veyra took his wrist and guided his hand to the narrowest part of her waist. Her palm remained over his as Ash moved beneath them. Adrian's mouth was near the pointed tip of her ear. "Is this correct?" "It will do." Her voice had become unsteady. They increased to a canter. Adrian followed every shift of her body, learning her rhythm until the two of them seemed to move as one rider. When Ash accelerated, Veyra leaned back slightly into him. His arms closed around her, secure and natural. Neither noticed the spectators gathering at the rail. They completed the circuit and stopped to applause, laughter, and several suggestive whistles. Veyra's ears darkened at the tips. Adrian remained behind her. "We appear to have caused confusion. Get off." "Are you embarrassed?" "I am considering murder." He dismounted, then reached up to help her. Veyra could easily have descended alone, but she placed both hands on his shoulders and allowed him to lift her down. Her body slid along his. When her boots touched the ground, Adrian's hands were still at her waist and hers were still around his neck. The noise at the rail faded from his awareness. "Veyra," he said. She looked almost angry, though not with him. "Do not say my name like that unless you intend to do something about it." "What would you like me to do?" "You are supposed to be clever." Adrian bent toward her. A photographer's flash powder exploded at the rail. Veyra jerked back. The crowd cheered as if they had already kissed. Adrian turned toward the photographer with a look that made the man lower his camera. "Better ground?" he asked. Veyra released him. "Somewhere without horses, reporters, or your unbearable smile." "Tonight?" She walked toward the gate. At the opening, she glanced back. "The West Hay Barn, after the evening bell." Adrian stood in the center of the ring long after she was gone. The photograph appeared on printed broadsheets before sunset. It showed Veyra sliding from the saddle into Adrian's arms, their faces close, her hands locked behind his neck. The caption read, "Rivals or lovers." Adrian purchased every copy he passed. He told himself it was to prevent his sponsor from seeing them. He kept one folded inside his coat. Veyra waited in the West Hay Barn with 2 lanterns and the stolen account book of a royal stable clerk. "That is less romantic than I expected," Adrian said when he entered. "You expected romance?" "You invited me to a hay barn after dark, to investigate attempted murder. I hoped we might do both." Veyra stared at him, then looked down at the account book. "Lock the door." The words sent a wholly unreasonable warmth through him. He slid the wooden bar into place. They sat together in an empty stall and compared the stable supply records with the list of riders. Someone had requested black wax, replacement blades, and 3 tournament arrows the afternoon before Adrian's fall. The signature belonged to a groom from his sponsor's private stable. "That proves access," Adrian said, "not motive." Veyra turned the page. A payment had been made to the same groom from a racing syndicate that would profit if neither finalist completed the course. The syndicate was partially owned by Adrian's sponsor. Adrian read the line twice. "He has wagers on both outcomes," Veyra said. "If you win, he receives your contracts. If we both fail, he earns a fortune." "Then why attack me first?" "Perhaps I was meant to find you." Adrian looked at her. "We often inspect the same courses," she continued. "He may have expected me to stop. If the attackers killed us together, it would look like bandits found 2 wealthy riders." The quiet warmth of the barn vanished. "You cannot race tomorrow," Adrian said. Veyra's expression became still. Choose your next words carefully. They will try again. And you think I should hide? I think I could not bear. He stopped. Veyra rose. You could not bear what? Adrian stood as well. Do not make me say it while you are angry. Say it because I am angry. I could not bear watching you get hurt. Her nostrils flared. I have been hurt before. Not while I had a chance to prevent it. You do not own the right to protect me. I know. He stepped closer. But I am asking for it. Veyra's anger faltered. Adrian reached for her hand. Not because you are weaker. Not because I doubt you. Because when I woke with you against me this morning, I wanted another morning. And another after that. I cannot pretend the thought of losing you means nothing. The account book slipped from Veyra's fingers into the hay. We have known each other 3 years, she whispered. We have argued for 3 years. That is not the same. It is how we began. Veyra searched his face. And how do you think we continue? Adrian lifted her hand and pressed it over his heart. Not as enemies. Her fingers curled against his shirt. We are still rivals, she said. Then hold my waist competitively. Veyra made a startled sound that became a laugh. Adrian smiled, and whatever stood between them finally gave way. She caught the front of his coat and pulled him down. Their first kiss was not cautious. It held 3 years of sharp words, stolen glances, and every finish line where one had searched the crowd for the other. Veyra's mouth was warm and demanding. Adrian's hands found her waist, then her back, drawing her against him until there was no space left for rivalry. Her small tusks brushed his lower lip. He slowed, giving her room to decide. Veyra kissed him again. Adrian backed into the stall wall, laughing softly against her mouth as she followed. Her fingers moved into his hair. His thumb traced the line where her shirt met the green skin at her waist. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. Veyra rested her forehead against his. That was a very poor investigation technique. I learned more than expected. Such as? You make a small sound when I touch here. His hand shifted gently along her side. She made the sound again, then narrowed her eyes. Use that knowledge carelessly, she said, and I will make you regret surviving the forest. I believe you. She kissed him once more, slower this time. Then someone tried to open the locked barn door. Veyra extinguished the nearest lantern. Adrian retrieved the account book while she moved silently beside the door. The latch lifted again. A blade scraped through the gap, trying to raise the wooden bar. Veyra caught Adrian's eye and pointed toward the loft. He climbed first, ignoring the protest in his ribs, then reached down for her. Veyra took his hand. A moment later, they were lying side by side in the hay above the stalls as the barn door opened below. 2 men entered with covered lanterns. The book is gone, one whispered. Then they have it. Search everything. Adrian's hand found Veyra's in the darkness. She threaded their fingers together and squeezed once. The men moved beneath them, driving short swords into the hay. One blade thrust through the loft floor a few inches from Adrian's shoulder. Veyra shifted over him, shielding his body with hers before he could object. Her cheek pressed beside his. The position would have been distracting under safer circumstances. Even now, Adrian was painfully aware of the weight of her against him, her thigh between his, and the soft movement of her breath at his ear. Do not enjoy this, she whispered, terrified. He breathed. Liar. The second man started up the ladder. Veyra waited until his head rose above the floor. Then she kicked the ladder away from the wall. The man fell into a pile of feed sacks with a cry. "Run," she said. They crossed the loft and jumped through the upper hay door onto the sloping roof of the next stable. Adrian landed badly, but Veyra caught his coat and kept him upright. Together, they slid down the wet shingles into the narrow lane behind the barns. They ran hand in hand through the rain. Veyra led him to the oldest section of the Orc stable, where grooms loyal to her slept above their horses. No attackers followed them inside. She barred the door, posted 2 stable hands at the entrance, and took Adrian to her private tack room. It contained a narrow cot, a washstand, and more trophies than furniture. Silver cups lined one wall. A child's crude wooden horse stood on the windowsill beside them. Adrian picked it up. One leg had been repaired with copper wire. "My first prize," Veyra said. "You won a toy horse?" "I won nothing. I carved it when I was 9. She took it from him and turned it in her hands. "I watched a cavalry school beyond the border fence. Human children rode circles while I carried water for their horses. At night I practiced on this." Adrian looked around at the cups. "You showed them." "I showed myself." She placed the horse back on the sill. That was harder. He understood more than she knew. His father had called him weak because he preferred careful training to beating fear out of a horse. After the old man died, Adrian spent years racing as though every victory could answer someone who was no longer there to listen. "When did you decide to stop proving yourself?" he asked. "I have not." Veyra looked toward him. "I merely chose better judges." Adrian touched her face, his palm resting against the scar on her cheek. "May I apply for the position? Your qualifications are poor. I am persistent. Annoyingly. And I admire you." Her eyes softened. "Dangerous assumption?" he asked. "No." Veyra turned her face into his hand. "Dangerous truth." The fear left behind by their escape settled into something more vulnerable. Veyra untied his rain-wet coat and pushed it from his shoulders. Her hands moved over his bandaged ribs, checking for new damage. "You should lie down," she said. "Will you join me for practical reasons?" "There is no room." There was no room on Ash. Veyra's gaze became warm. "You complained." "I was inexperienced." He sat on the edge of the narrow cot. Veyra stood between his knees, just as she had in the toll house, but now neither pretended her closeness was necessary. Adrian placed his hands on her waist. "Like this?" he asked. "You are learning." She bent and kissed him. This kiss was slow enough to discover. Adrian learned how carefully Veyra angled her tusks and how her breath caught when he stroked the bare skin beneath the edge of her shirt. She learned that brushing her thumb through the hair at the nape of his neck made him pull her closer. He kissed the corner of her mouth, then the scar crossing her cheek. Veyra went still. "No one does that," she said. "Then no one has deserved you." Do not say beautiful things merely because we may die tomorrow. Adrian looked up at her. I am saying them because I wasted 3 years. Her fingers tightened in his hair. You truly wanted to defeat me? Desperately. Why? Because it was the only way I knew to make you look at me. Veyra stared, then pushed him gently backward onto the cot and climbed over him. Idiot, she whispered. You care about me. Be quiet. She kissed him until silence was the only possible answer. The cot complained beneath their combined weight. Adrian's hands moved along her strong back and settled respectfully above her hips. Veyra braced herself over his injured side, careful even in her urgency. When her mouth moved to his throat, Adrian closed his eyes. Veyra. She raised her head at once. Pain? No. He smiled. The opposite. Color deepened across her green cheeks. He had never seen her blush before. The discovery felt more intimate than the kiss. Veyra sat back and looked down at him. If we continue, I will not be able to pretend this was the storm. Do you want to pretend? She shook her head. Adrian reached up. Neither do I. She lowered herself beside him instead of over him, fitting onto the cot with one leg draped across his. Their desire remained between them, warm and unmistakable. But so did exhaustion and the knowledge that armed men were somewhere beyond the door. Adrian drew the blanket over them. After the race, he said. Veyra studied his face. After the race, what? No locked doors, no attackers, no excuses to leave before morning. You assume I will invite you? I am prepared to be persuasive. Your strongest argument? He kissed the silver ring around her tusk. Veyra's eyes closed. That is unfair. Competition rarely is. She tucked her head beneath his chin. After the race. Adrian held her while rain ran down the small window. They did not sleep immediately. They talked in whispers about horses, childhood, and the lives they had imagined before the circuit consumed them. Veyra confessed that she hated ceremonial banquets because human chairs were too narrow for her shoulders. Adrian confessed that he had once hidden in a laundry cart to escape a duchess determined to marry him. Was she beautiful? Veyra asked. Very. Her hand stopped tracing circles over his chest. But she believed horses were decorative, he continued. There are limits. Veyra relaxed. Wise. Were you jealous? I was deciding whether the Duchess required challenging. To a race? If she was fortunate. Adrian laughed, then winced at his ribs. Veyra immediately placed her palm over the bandage. Careful. He covered her hand with his. There it is again. What? Kindness. She looked almost embarrassed. Do not spread rumors. Near midnight, they examined the account book again. A second payment was scheduled for the morning of the final race. It mentioned a signal at the old aqueduct and the words, both riders. They plan to strike during the mountain section, Adrian said. Then we show this to the royal guard. The steward will bury it, not if the entire crowd sees the attempt. Adrian understood her plan. You want to let them try. We will know the signal and the location. We ride together until the aqueduct, draw them out, and let the course guards witness it. That is a terrible plan. Do you have a better one? Several. They all involve you remaining in this room. Veyra rose on one elbow. We have discussed this. And I listened. I simply disliked the conclusion. She touched the bruise near his temple. I will not abandon the race. Not even for you. I know. Does that anger you? It terrifies me. He took her hand and kissed the center of her palm. But if I asked you to become smaller so I could feel larger, I would not be the man you kissed tonight. Veyra's expression changed with painful tenderness. What do you need from me? He asked. Ride beside me. Always? She swallowed. Tomorrow. It was not yet the promise he wanted, but it was the one she could give. Tomorrow, Adrian agreed. They slept with their fingers linked between them. At dawn, Adrian woke first. Veyra lay on her stomach, one black braid across his chest and the blanket low on one green shoulder. Without the hard expression she wore for the crowds, she looked younger and unguarded. Adrian brushed his knuckles over her cheek. Her eyes opened slowly. You're staring, she murmured, studying weaknesses. Find any? One. She waited. You. Veyra stared at him for a heartbeat, then pulled the blanket over his face. He laughed beneath it. She tried to escape the cot, but Adrian caught her around the waist. Veyra fell back against him, and he kissed her shoulder until she stopped pretending to struggle. "We have a race," she said, breathless. A terrible scheduling decision. She turned in his arms and kissed him once, firmly. "Win if you can, human. Kiss me like that again, and I will follow you anywhere. That is the problem." She smiled as she said it. They left the tack room separately to avoid attracting attention. It did not work. The photograph from the exercise ring had multiplied overnight. Copies hung in tavern windows, betting stalls, and even above the stable entrance. Someone had drawn a heart around them in red ink. Adrian found Veyra beneath it, staring upward with her arms crossed. "Accurate?" he asked. "They made your shoulders too broad. And yours?" "Perfect." He stood beside her. Their hands brushed between them, hidden by the folds of their coats. The crowd beyond the yard began chanting their names as the final race bell rang. 40,000 spectators filled the royal grounds. Human nobles occupied the covered grandstand in pale silks, while orc families crowded the eastern terraces beneath red banners. Between them stood farmers, soldiers, merchants, stable children, and riders who had lost in earlier stages of the circuit. The final course stretched 30 miles. It began with 2 laps of the Royal Mile, left the city through the northern gate, crossed open farmland, climbed through the old aqueduct, and returned along the river road. Speed mattered, but endurance and judgment won the crown. Adrian entered the paddock on Northwind. The stallion had rested, eaten, and passed 2 examinations. Veyra rode Ash beside him, the mare's black coat polished until it reflected the morning sun. They wore different colors. Adrian had replaced his sponsor's blue with a plain charcoal coat. Veyra wore deep red, her braids bound tightly at the nape of her neck. At the mounting rail, Adrian's former sponsor stepped into their path. "A word," the nobleman said. "You have used many," Adrian replied. "None improved with repetition." The man's eyes moved to Veyra. The orc does not belong in this conversation. Veyra smiled, showing both tusks. "Say it again. I would enjoy explaining where I belong." Adrian placed his horse between them. "Anything you say to me can be said before her." The sponsor's face reddened. "If you ride without my colors, every debt I purchased from your father returns to you. You purchased my contracts, not my father's debts. A court may disagree. Then a court can also examine your payment to a groom who cut my saddle." For the smallest instant, the man looked afraid. It was enough. Veyra saw it too. Her hand moved beneath her coat, where the account book was secured against her body. "You have nothing," the sponsor said. "We have each other," Veyra replied. "That appears to trouble you more." The crowd at the rail began watching. The nobleman forced a smile and stepped aside. "Neither of you will finish," he whispered as they passed. Adrian wanted to turn back, but Veyra caught his hand from the saddle. "Ride beside me," she said. He looked up at her. "Tomorrow?" "Today first." He squeezed her fingers and mounted. The other finalists entered the starting lane. There were 12 in total, though only Adrian and Veyra could win the circuit by points. The rest chased the purse and the honor of the final stage. The chief steward raised the silver starting pistol. Adrian looked across at Veyra. "Something missing?" she asked. A customary gesture for luck. "You have never required luck." "I have recently reconsidered." Veyra glanced at the steward. Then she guided Ash close, caught Adrian by the collar, and kissed him before the entire stadium. The roar nearly frightened both horses. When she released him, Adrian stared at her, Was that sufficient? She asked. Ask me at the finish. The pistol fired. They launched forward together. The first 2 laps were chaos. Hooves thundered over packed earth. Riders fought for the inside rail, saving their horses while trying not to become trapped behind slower competitors. Adrian allowed 3 riders to pass, trusting Northwind's strength later. Veyra took the lead immediately, because Ash ran more calmly in open space. On the second turn, Adrian drew beside her. Showing off? He called, trying to escape your conversation. He smiled and let Northwind lengthen his stride. They crossed the city gate shoulder to shoulder. Beyond the walls, the course widened through fields bright with spring grain. Spectators lined the fences. Children waved red and charcoal ribbons together, inspired by the broadsheet photograph. Adrian and Veyra held a controlled pace. Twice other riders tried to force between them, but the space closed as though Ash and Northwind had trained together for years. At the first water station, Veyra slowed. Do not take the blue buckets, she said. Why? The account book mentioned blue paint. Adrian guided Northwind past the official line. They used water carried by Veyra's grooms instead. 2 miles later, a chestnut horse that had drunk from a blue bucket began staggering. Its rider pulled up safely, but the warning was clear. The sabotage was larger than either had imagined. We should stop the race, Adrian said. The guards need proof. A poisoned horse is proof of cheating, not of who ordered it. He hated that she was right. The farmland ended at the foot of the northern hills. Riders entered the forest one at a time along a narrow switchback. Veyra went first. Adrian followed so closely that Northwind's nose nearly touched Ash's tail. The route passed the oak where his arrow had struck the night before. He saw the cut saddle strap in his memory and felt again the sudden weightlessness of falling. Veyra looked back. Stay with me. I am here. Your tongue is against your cheek. I am planning how to defeat you. Liar. The word warmed him even there. They climbed toward the aqueduct. Ancient stone arches crossed a ravine, carrying a narrow road beside the dry water channel. Course guards were supposed to stand at both ends. The western post was empty. Veyra raised one fist. They slowed. A strip of red cloth hung from the central arch, the signal described in the account book. We turn back, Adrian said. Hooves sounded behind them. 4 riders in race colors emerged from the trees, but scarves covered their faces. 2 carried short crossbows. Too late, Veyra said. The first bolt passed between them. Ash sprang onto the aqueduct. Northwind followed. The stone road was barely wide enough for one horse, and the ravine dropped sharply on either side. Adrian heard a mechanism release beneath the hooves ahead. Wire, he shouted. Veyra flattened herself over Ash's neck. The mare cleared the thin cable stretched across the road. Northwind tried to jump, but a second wire rose behind the first. It caught his front legs. The stallion fell. Adrian threw himself sideways to avoid being crushed. He struck the dry channel and rolled against the stone wall. Northwind scrambled up, wild-eyed, then bolted across the aqueduct without him. The masked riders approached. Veyra was already turning Ash on the narrow road. No, Adrian shouted. Keep going. She rode straight back toward him. An attacker raised his crossbow. Veyra pulled a small throwing blade from her boot and sent it through the weapon's string. The bow snapped in the man's hands. Ash stopped beside Adrian. Veyra held out her arm. Up. You will lose the lead. Adrian, you will lose everything. Her amber eyes burned. Not everything. He caught her arm. She hauled him behind her just as the masked riders reached the aqueduct. Hold my waist, Veyra said. This time there was no joke in her voice. Adrian locked both arms around her. Ash accelerated toward the eastern end. One masked rider drew level, reaching for Veyra's reins. Adrian released one arm, caught the attacker by his coat, and pulled him from the saddle. The empty horse veered into the dry water channel. Another rider approached on Veyra's left. She pressed Ash against the low wall, leaving no space to pass. Adrian felt her muscles working beneath his hands, every movement direct and fearless. "Still with me?" she called. He tightened his hold. "Always." They crossed the aqueduct. Northwind waited beyond it, trapped by a closed service gate. Veyra brought Ash beside the running stallion. "Can you mount?" she asked. "At this speed? Are you afraid?" "Constantly." Adrian rose behind her, one hand still at her waist. He reached for Northwind's reins, caught them, and swung across to the gray stallion while both horses ran. Pain tore through his ribs. He nearly slipped, but Veyra caught the back of his coat and held him until his boots found the stirrups. They released each other together. Course guards appeared ahead, drawn by the crossbow fire. Veyra threw the account book to their captain. "Payment records," she shouted. "Arrest the riders behind us," and the nobleman named on the final page. The captain opened the book, saw the royal stable seal, and signaled his men. Adrian looked back. The remaining attackers tried to turn, but mounted guards closed both ends of the road. "We have them," he said. Veyra faced forward. 3 racehorses were already disappearing down the hill. "And they have the lead. You gave it up for me. Do not become sentimental until after we catch them. You love when I am sentimental." She looked over, surprised by the word he had not quite spoken. Adrian's heart stopped. Veyra's expression softened. "After the race." Then she urged Ash downhill. Adrian followed. They rode harder than they had intended, but never carelessly. One by one, the leaders came back to them. The first had exhausted his horse on the climb. The second lost time at the river ford. The third still held a quarter-mile advantage when the course emerged from the trees. The royal city stood in the distance. Bells rang from the walls, telling spectators that the first riders were approaching. Veyra drew beside Adrian. "Your ribs?" "Attached." "Northwind?" Adrian felt the stallion stride. "Angry." "Good." "Ash?" "More angry." They smiled at each other. The third rider entered the river road ahead. It was a fast, flat stretch of 5 miles. Adrian knew Northwind could catch him, but Ash had spent precious strength carrying 2 riders across the aqueduct. "Use my draft," he told Veyra. "You will give me the final turn. If you can take it." Her eyes flashed. "There you are." Adrian moved Northwind in front, breaking the wind for Ash. Veyra settled close behind. They ran that way for 3 miles, trading the lead whenever one horse needed relief. It was not permitted collusion according to the old racing traditions, but no written rule forbade kindness. They caught the leader at the city gate. The grandstand rose as one when Veyra and Adrian entered the Royal Mile together. The sound was beyond hearing. It became pressure in Adrian's chest, vibration beneath Northwind's hooves, and color rushing past the edges of his vision. The other rider tried to block Veyra at the rail. Adrian moved outside him, forcing the man to choose. The opening appeared for a single heartbeat. Veyra took it. Ash shot through. Now only Adrian followed. They reached the final bend in the same order they had begun the morning. Veyra in red, Adrian at her shoulder, the entire kingdom waiting to see which rival would break first. Adrian lowered himself over Northwind's neck. Veyra glanced toward him. For 3 years, he had dreamed of seeing fear in her eyes. He saw joy instead. It was reflected in him. They asked their horses for everything. Northwind gained half a length. Ash answered. The finish line rushed toward them beneath a silver arch. Adrian could have crowded Veyra against the rail. It was legal, common, and expected. He left her room. Veyra could have angled Ash outward and broken Northwind's stride. She held her line. They crossed so close that Adrian did not know who had won. For several seconds, neither slowed. Then the horses eased beneath them, breathing hard but sound. Adrian turned Northwind toward Veyra. She was laughing, not the restrained laugh from the stable. This was fierce, breathless, and free. Adrian began laughing too. Veyra reached across the space between their horses. He took her hand. The crowd roared louder. "Was the kiss sufficient?" she asked. Adrian pulled her hand to his mouth. "I require more evidence." Before she could answer, the result appeared on the great board above the grandstand. Veyra Ashbourne, first. Adrian Vale, second. The margin was 1/100th of a second. Veyra stared at the board. Adrian watched 12,000 sovereigns become a school in her eyes. "You won," he said. She looked at him as if she could not breathe. He dismounted, crossed between the horses, and lifted her down into his arms. Veyra wrapped both arms around his neck. "You won," he repeated against her ear. "We won." Then she kissed him before 40,000 people, and this time no starting pistol interrupted them. The royal guard arrested Adrian's former sponsor before the victory ceremony. The captured riders confessed when confronted with the account book, the poisoned water, and the stable groom's testimony. The chief steward resigned before he could be removed. Adrian's contracts were declared fraudulent. For the first time since his father's death, no one owned a share of his victories. Veyra received the silver crown at sunset. Instead of wearing it, she placed it in Adrian's hands while the crowd watched. "Keep this for me," she said. "Why?" "I need both hands." She took his face between them and kissed him again. 3 months later, they purchased the abandoned cavalry estate beyond the northern ridge. Veyra spent her prize repairing the barns and opening the wells. Adrian used his second-place purse to buy 12 patient horses and remove every narrow human chair from the dining hall. The first students arrived in autumn. Human and orc children together, many of whom had never been permitted to touch a saddle. Above the gate hung a simple wooden sign, Ashbourne and Vale Riding School. They argued for 2 weeks about whose name should come first. Veyra won that contest too. Adrian moved into the farmhouse before winter. There were no separate rooms, despite Veyra's repeated claim that his presence was merely practical. Most mornings he woke with one arm around her waist and one of her braids across his face. On the anniversary of the final race, they rode Ash together to the ridge overlooking their fields. Children trained below them while Northwind watched from retirement beneath an apple tree. Adrian sat behind Veyra, his arms resting loosely around her. "You are holding too lightly," she said. "There are no arrows." "Imagine arrows." He tightened his embrace and kissed the pointed tip of her ear. "Like this?" Veyra turned in the saddle. The silver ring on her tusk caught the evening light. "Better," she whispered. She kissed him slowly, with no crowd waiting, no finish line ahead, and nowhere either of them needed to go. They had begun as rivals who believed victory meant leaving the other behind. In the end, they learned that the finest race of their lives was the one they chose to ride together.